Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Stone Chapel Podcast. I'm David Capes. Oliver Hersey joins me today to talk about the mission and history of Jerusalem University College. He became president there as a young man right after COVID, and 2 years into his presidency, the massive attack by Hamas on October the 7th. It's an amazing place located just outside the Jaffa Gate in the old city. It's a school that can give a student a rich experience in the land of Israel. Now, the Stone Chapel Podcast is part of the Church Leaders Podcast Network. We are dedicated to providing resources for church leaders who are seeking assistance from the best theologians and schools in the world. You can learn more at ChurchLeaders.com/podcast network. Have you ever wanted to study in Israel? Well, you probably need to know more about Jerusalem University College. They offer all sorts of courses, and they put you in touch with the lands of the Bible in a way that no one else can. So today, professor, leader, pastor, college president, and all-around good guy, Oliver Hersey, on the Stone Chapel Podcast.
My name is Oliver Hersey. I'm the president of Jerusalem University College. It's a privilege to be a part of this. I have been at JUC now for 5 years, and I have a wonderful family, a wife and 2 children. I love all things related to the Bible, especially its context. And so living in Jerusalem, having a chance to facilitate education on Mount Zion is a privilege where we're constantly in the context of the biblical world. We get to share that with so many people. I am a student also, and I have always loved learning. My PhD is in Hebrew Bible and Egyptology, and so I've had the privilege of diving deep into that world, particularly the languages and the comparative backgrounds.
Dr. Oliver Hersey, good to see you. Welcome to the Stone Chapel Podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, and you've been in the Stone Chapel today, so it was already a great experience.
It's a phenomenal place, and I always learn something new when I visit.
Yeah. It's a unique place, as is Jerusalem University College. You see that segue? Wasn't that a good segue?
So good.
Wasn't that a great segue?
So good.
All right, I've been there. It's an amazing place. The location right outside the city walls.
Yep. Jaffa Gate. Yep.
Yeah, near the Jaffa Gate, and just a gentle walk, I guess, south from there. Mm-hmm. The great buildings, great setting, great faculty you have.
Yeah.
Exactly what is the mission of Jerusalem University College?
We're a school that's been around since 1957, and we are on Mount Zion for the sole purpose of creating opportunities for students to have an immersive study experience in Israel and the surrounding regions so that they can know God and His Word better and hopefully be equipped for ministry or teaching of some sort in global service.
There's a lot of things in the New Testament and Old Testament as well that knowing the geography, knowing the land, it really helps to begin to visualize and think through and understand what's happening in the story.
So true. There's an example I used to give all the time in the book of Habakkuk. It's a despairing moment. Jerusalem's about to get overrun by Babylon, and he prays at the very end. The last words he says to God is, "Lord, give me a sure footing like the deer to walk upon the heights," which is strange, but when you're in Israel, you travel around, you all of a sudden see these deer that have sure footing, and they are on these cliff sides, scampering effortlessly upon these rocks out in the wilderness, and you think to yourself, this is the image that Habakkuk has. And there are insights like that all the time where the Bible has this three-dimensional clarity that begins to settle into the mind as you're there seeing parts of the biblical world come to life.
So how did you become president there?
That is a good question. I think it found me a little bit. We were in Chicago for about 15 years. I went through a variety of iterations of teaching. I was a math teacher for a little while and pastor for a season. As I was working on my doctorate, I taught at North Park University. And one day, as I was a full-time pastor in the area, someone approached me and said, you should apply for this job. And I looked at the application, I looked at the job, and it was president of Jerusalem University College in Jerusalem, Israel. Now that's fascinating because it aligned with something that I had sensed a calling to back in 2007. that had been now brewing for a couple decades. And that was a calling to help people go to Israel to learn God's word in its context. That was part of the reason I quit my math teaching job. It was part of the reason I went back to grad school. It's part of the reason I did a PhD. I had no idea throughout it all that I would end up being appointed to serve as the 11th president of this university that is situated in Jerusalem, facilitating now for thousands of people Holy Land study opportunities. It found me, and I think it found me at the right time, because I think any earlier in my career and journey, it's one of those things, it's like I would say no to it. Too hard, too difficult, too scary. And yet I was in a season of life where I read that job description. I thought to myself, wow, this is tailor-made for what I have sensed the Lord calling me to, for all the things that have been preparing me. And when they offered us the job, my wife and I, to move there, I remember all of a sudden thinking to myself, well, this is real. This is real now.
Yeah.
And I had this coming, this reckoning moment of
So had you been to Israel a lot before that point?
I had, yeah. So we had gone to Israel our first time as a couple in 2007. That was my first trip. Yeah, my wife, Andrea. Yeah. We went there in 2007. We'd been married a couple of years, and we went with a guy named Ray Vanderlaan, an excellent teacher. Some people perhaps know him. We went with his high school students, and it was in 2007 that I was standing on the shore of the Dead Sea, where I sensed the Lord saying, nudging me, hey, you're not supposed to be teaching math anymore. You're supposed to teach Bible this way in the land. And I thought, okay, I don't know what that means. I have no idea what that journey looks like. Several times after that, I went back to Israel. So I had been back in 2009. We went back in 2011. In fact, a random fact, since this is the Stone Chapel podcast here, and it's connected to the Lanier Center, in 2011, we crossed paths with Mark Lanier's niece, Michelle Hunt.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, my wife and I went to excavate. We were excavating in the same square at Kirbet Kayafa in the Elah Valley with Michelle Hunt. I had no idea who she was. I had no idea who Mark was. But these connections would come full circle many years later when I was here in the Stone Chapel, actually, when all of a sudden up behind me says, hey, Oliver? And I turn around and I look, and it's Michelle. And she's like, yeah, I'm here. I'm here all the time. This is my uncle. I was like, what? It was just one of those moments of like, oh, this is so crazy.
The small world after all.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It had been since 2011. I hadn't gone back to Israel actually for quite some time before we moved in 2021.
So you go back to the land, and you go back during COVID.
Yeah, tail end of COVID.
Or at the tail end of COVID.
And it was a bit unnerving because it was actually May of 2021. Some people listening might remember. This is where Hamas actually fired a barrage of rockets all month long of May of 2021, the end of COVID. There was, I think, and I'd have to look back at the numbers, but several hundred rockets fired into Israel in the month before we moved. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, this was not what I was anticipating.
Which direction do they come from?
They come from the south, from the Gaza Strip.
From the Gaza area.
So they're usually targeting Tel Aviv. So they're targeting the coast.
Tel Aviv's the largest city, we should say.
That's correct. Yeah, Tel Aviv's right there on the coast, and it's one of the major cities. And the rockets from Hamas can't reach very far, so they would make their way to Tel Aviv. And again, 99.9% of all the rockets were getting intercepted. So we weren't extremely concerned, but it was one of those moments of, wow, I'm moving my two kids and my wife into a zone of the world, a world that's in conflict.
Yeah.
And so we got there, and obviously we had to rebuild the institution because the institution really focuses on in-residence education. I mean, COVID just shut that down. So we had a task before us, and we had got it up and running. And in the next 2 years, by 2023, we were full steam. We had about 1,200 students coming through.
1,200 students?
Yeah. Oh,
wow.
Yeah. So about 100 of those would be our long-term in residence 3 months at a time, or maybe 2 years at a time. And then another 1,000 or so, 1,100 would be church groups or academic institutions like Wheaton College.
Yeah, my first trip there was with Wheaton College.
So we have partnerships now with over 70 schools like Wheaton College, Taylor, Calvin, Houston Christian University right here.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
That's a newly formed partnership that's been slowly blossoming. So
nice.
Obviously, all of these things were stalled because of what happened in October.
Well, then
2023.
October 7th comes
Yeah.
along, and that's it just seems like COVID is just beginning to let up. You guys have started hitting your stride
Yeah.
pretty well in relationship to the new kind of education you're offering, and October 7th.
And everything went sideways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've been involved in the war ever
Yeah.
since.
Yeah, wow. I don't wish that on anybody. I wish war on anybody. I don't wish leadership in this season going through that. It's hard. We immediately watched 95% of our enrollment fall through the cracks, as understandably so. People don't want to travel to a war zone. With that comes the releasing of many colleagues, and so we had to downsize. We released about 50% of our faculty and staff. I'm the person that puts that hat on.
And you got to make those calls.
I got to make those calls, and thankfully everyone was very understanding and gracious, but it doesn't make it easy. And we tried to do it quick and early and help people get on their way with proper severance. But yeah, we've really had to recalibrate so many components of our institution in this season. It's now been 2 years since this war started, and while things are turning and looking better, we still have a long way to go in terms of recovering enrollment numbers. And I don't imagine they'll be recovered overnight. I think it takes time for people to feel confident to take a trip to Israel.
Yeah, I think so.
After all that's happened. And
Right.
It's not like COVID. See, when COVID ended, COVID wasn't violent. And because it wasn't violent, I understand that it impacted many people of older age, but because it wasn't war, people were ready to return to Israel with the blink of an eye. And we immediately had an influx of 55
As soon
students.
as Israel was open, people
were there
on the plains, heading away.
This is not the same. And because it's still kind of grinding on and it's still in the news, it's going to be a very tempered and slow build back. And so we keep talking as a team, let's be patient. Let's continue to maintain our relationships. Let's think about new ways we can help people get to the biblical lands. So we take students to Turkey, to Greece, to Egypt, and all of the other places that the biblical story unfolded.
And do you take those trips yourself, or do you take those trips with others, or others do it for you?
No, we lead those trips. I teach a course, Egypt in the Bible, when I have time and space in my schedule. And that course has a field study. That's optional, but we encourage people to do it. It's a trip, about a 10-day trip to Egypt, and we do that in December, early December. It's a perfect time to go. It's not too hot. And we have to follow Egyptian government laws, so I'll go as an instructor, but we have, per Egyptian laws, you have to have a tour guide.
Who is from Egypt?
An Egyptian tour guide. And
Right.
we have a really awesome gentleman that we work with, a believer who really gets our programs and our institution and the philosophy of our itinerary, because we have a philosophy of the itinerary that we build. So we don't have to do that in Israel. Because we're an institution in Israel, we actually don't have to have a tour guide on our bus. So that's one of the unique things about going on a trip to the Holy Land with us, is that we don't have an Israeli tour guide. Who you're going to have on one of our programs is a scholar from America who's lived many years in Israel and has published and has a heart for Jesus, and yet a deep insight and knowledge of the land. And he'll be free to teach as he wishes on each site, because we're an institution. We are not governed by the tourism laws.
Earlier, you mentioned that you were standing on the edge of the Dead Sea, and you felt God nudging you, saying, no longer you're going to be teaching algebra, math. You're going to be teaching the Bible.
Yeah.
What can you learn about the Bible in the land that you can't learn about it from another place, another vantage point?
It's a great question. So I realize, maybe even some people listening to this, there are some people who can't go to the land for whatever reason, economics, physical. So I've always been a believer that you don't have to go to the Holy Land to know the truth and the story that God has unfolded in Scripture. We know that's true from eons of history. Having said that, if you can make the sacrifice, both time-wise and economic-wise, to take a trip like this, I would say you will have a very enriched view of God's Word that perhaps you can't get any other way. And when I say enriched, you're going to be seeing the hills, the caves, the pathways that these biblical writers and characters were dealing with. And you will take on a new appreciation, perhaps, for their life, for what they taught, what they said. I describe it this way. It's like we know what black and white TV when that shifted to color, it was dynamic. We got to see those great shows now in color. And black and white, the stories were still the same. We're still watching the same sitcom, the same story, same
Still
cartoon.
laughing.
Still laughing, still crying, whatever it is. But now there's a new realism that is involved. And that can sometimes draw you deeper into the story, deeper into the text. And I think sometimes a pilgrimage trip like that can do exactly that, draw you deeper into God's story in a way that perhaps not going can't do.
There's a place in the Judean desert. I'm sure you probably know it. I recall that it had a name, but we were standing looking, I guess, north, and I looked down to my right, and I could see Jericho. And then I looked up to my left, and I could see Jerusalem. There's that ancient road.
Yep.
It's the same road that Jesus would have traveled, that disciples, that others would have traveled, going from Jericho up to Jerusalem.
Exactly right. And when you're on that road, I don't know about you, but when I read that story before going to Israel, I had a view of a road based on my limited understanding of roads here in America. And I'm an American. I'm from America. So, that's my mental picture. When you're standing on that pathway and you think about the story of the Good Samaritan that happens on Jericho Road and the robbery and the beating and the fact that these men now traveling to Jerusalem for their, ritual duties, their cultic duties at the temple, how they bypass that broken down man. They're not on the other side of the road. It's not like I'm in Chicago and I can be on the other side of the road and really they're out.
You're not 40 yards away from them.
You're literally walking by this guy. He could reach out and touch you perhaps.
Yeah.
Or you could reach out and touch him, which is perhaps the potency of that story. So when you're standing there on that path and you realize, wow, this road is narrow, this is a gorge, this is a road that is out in the wilderness, it's a road that's plagued with bandits. Okay, this story now makes a lot of sense. And, obviously there's a lot of theological things going on in that story, but those are the types of moments of clarity. It's like, okay, I see it.
Until you see that, you don't really quite get it.
Yeah.
Right? And the other thing that people will often walk away with is the land of Israel is not broad. It's not big land.
Oh my.
Right.
So small.
It's a small land.
Yeah. It's a very small land. It's the diversity of California. Okay, if you've been to California out west, there's a lot of diversity in that state, smashed into the size of like a state like New Jersey. Literally from campus, we can travel 35 minutes and be in a completely different climate zone that's now 1,400 feet below sea level. The lowest spot on planet Earth that's exposed. It's remarkable. You can be up in the middle of the hills in Jerusalem again, and it may snow. That doesn't happen often, but once every few years it'll have a snowfall.
So the war will be over.
As we say in Arabic, inshallah.
Inshallah, yeah. God willing.
God willing.
God
exactly.
willing.
God willing.
The war will be over. What happens next at Jerusalem University College? What does the president lead it to do?
Our number one task is to continue to keep the ship afloat. To be very honest, think about losing 95% of students. That's a significant blow economically. So we're really trying to be lean and trim across the board. We are so grateful for the many people who've been generous to us to help offset some of the losses. And
I heard you use the word miracle earlier. It's almost miraculous.
It is
nearly
miraculous. By any metric, we shouldn't exist anymore. But through providential moments and people, we have been able to stay afloat. So right now, the core issue is let's stay afloat. When the war's over, when we can return back to some normalcy, I think JUC has been able to take this time and internally get a lot of things ironed out, build a lot of new things. We've made the ship a lot stronger inside. I think we're going to be set up to really cruise into a nice horizon. My vision is that we grow not just our numbers from the West, but that we also grow our numbers of students that are from the majority world, whether that's through online education, whether that's through scholarships that help students from India travel to Jerusalem to come and study in the Holy Land. I'm getting emails literally every month from people in India and people in Africa saying, we want to come to Jerusalem. The problem is funding. So, my chief goal now as president is to really seek to build relationships with people who can help young blossoming scholars, pastors in these indigenous countries, in these countries out in the majority world, to come and take part in this enriched education, so that they in turn can go back to their congregations and teach the Bible in its context in a way that changes life, in a way that really brings truth into the hearts of humans.
And some great things are happening in Africa and in Asia and other parts of the world where there's not a lot of theological education.
There isn't, and that's something that is deep on my heart. It weighs on me, and I want to help whatever we can do, our small part in partnering with existing seminaries or just working with churches to help educate in a way that's cost effective. I mean, I realize it's expensive to get people to Israel, so trying to do that in the most economically viable way is one of my goals.
Yeah, very good. Well, we're going to say to our audience, stay tuned. We'll hear more another time.
I appreciate it.
Dr. Oliver Hersey, thank you.
My pleasure.
If you want more information about Jerusalem University College, you go to juc.edu. That's juc.edu. Go ahead, get informed, get enrolled, and get started. I look forward to getting back to Israel and seeing the progress of the school one day. Thanks to our audio editor, the fetching Kathy Capes. Thanks to Phil Keggy for our music. Thanks to Jana Firestone and Jessica Mauser for their help in producing this podcast. This podcast comes to you due to the generosity of the good people of the Lanier Theological Library and Learning Center in Houston, Texas. Now, you want to think 5-star when you're rating this podcast, not 4-star, not 3, but 5-star when you're rating this podcast. Until next time, I'm David Capes. Thanks for listening.